Now, your host, Ken Brew, on News Radio 700 WLW.
Hello there, Scott Sloan out, I'm in. Good morning, great to have you with us as we begin another week and we brace ourselves for the latest consumer price index inflation data dump that will come this Friday. We know it costs more to live in this country than it ever has before. Each passing day brings higher gas prices. Global food prices are up 30% on the year. Housing prices have jumped a record 21% in that same time period. The price of a barrel of oil has doubled. Up and up and up it goes. We can drill down on just about anything that you and I need to exist, just to walk out the door and live, and we will see that it costs us more today than it did a year ago. And that's the thing about inflation. It doesn't just target one age group. It doesn't just target one demographic group. It hits everybody. But in reality, it hits those of us that are in the lower class or in the lower middle class harder than anyone else, even if the middle class and the upper middle class are taking it on the chin right now. Inflation is everywhere. And so last week, President Biden sat down with the chairman of the Fed, and he wasn't trying to twist the Fed chair's arm. He said he was trying to keep a distance, but it looked more like theater than it did anything else, trying to look like he was in charge and on top of everything that was going on that have created higher gasoline prices and grocery prices and other prices, still trying to remain distant from the Fed. But let's face it, this is a huge problem for the president and a mega problem for those who are running for election in his party in November. And until he and they get their arms around this and want to deal with it effectively in a realistic sense and not continue to come with us with some ideology that doesn't intersect with their reality, well, we're going to have what we have. When Donald Trump left office, inflation was running about 1.4%. Joe Biden now is presiding over an economy that has jumped 8.3% in the last year alone. So what's going on here? How can he fight inflation without messing up interest rates? How can he bring prices of things down without starting at the root of what appears to be the problem, and that is opening up our production of fossil fuel in this country? How does he do it? Or can he do it? Standing by is somebody that knows all about inflation. He deals with it on almost a daily basis. He's a good guest of this program, and anytime we can get financial strategist Mitch Kramer on this show, it's a good day, and he's leading off. Mitch, how are you on this glorious day?
Fantastic, Ken. Great monologue.
How did we get here? Was it all on January 20, 2021 when he took office? Were there signs before he took office, in between the election and Joe Biden taking over, that the economy was headed for some rough water? Because this is about as rough as I've seen it in my lifetime. How did we get here?
Well, I think you have to look at the fundamentals of the Republican and Democratic Party. And the Democrats prefer big government. They want to be involved in all aspects of our life. And Republicans teach more self-reliance. So a lot of the rules that the Democrats wanted, they couldn't get pushed through that Bernie Sanders wanted because he was unelectable. Joe Biden was. So Joe Biden is basically the front man for the progressive wing of the Democratic Party who's running this country.
So you had a situation in South Carolina during the primary season where it was a muddled field. I think by the time they got to South Carolina in March of 2020, they still didn't know who won the Iowa caucuses. And they get there, and they had to make a decision. The decision, just as you lined out. Bernie Sanders looked like a viable candidate, largely supported by the ultra-left wing of his party. And so there, from all indications, Representative Jim Clyburn, who's been in the House for many, many years, brokered a deal. Okay, we got to have somebody emerge from South Carolina to, become the front runner here, or we're not going to get off the ground with any of this stuff. And so he brokered a deal. And he got everybody out of the way. He got Pete Buttigieg to, Pete, get out of the way. You'll have a seat at the table when it's all said and done. Elizabeth Warren, you're not going anywhere, but if we can get our guy elected, you'll have a strong voice in the way the economy goes. And in essence, Joe Biden became a Trojan horse. And all of these people loaded inside his Trojan horse, and what he delivered was everything that was gaining no traction in the winter and spring of 2020. It was a great sleight of hand. I don't doubt that they got more votes than Donald Trump. I think that dog wasn't going to hunt from jump. But it was a great political sleight of hand. You've got to give it to them. They figured it out and got it done, did they not?
Exactly. Democrats know how to win elections at the ballot box going forward. Getting the votes out, I don't think they do as well. But you got to give them credit. They really did a great job of getting Joe Biden elected, and the progressive wing of the party got what they wanted. Ken, I think there's a famous quote from history that applies today. Vladimir Lenin said, "The worse, the better," just prior to the Russian Revolution about 100 years ago. And I really think that's the Democrats' mantra, that they want to get to this progressive agenda yesterday. But the country is not progressive. 10, 20% are, 80% of us are not. And this is not going to fly with American voters. And you're going to see a huge bloodbath for the Democrats come this November.
Well, I think so, too. This country has never operated politically on the extreme. When the right got too far out of hand, when the Tea Party came in here back in the early part of the last decade, you saw it come really back more towards center. Same thing with what happened during President Obama's first administration. His midterms, they came really back to center. If you really want to hand out some kudos here, Bill Clinton figured it out after the 94 midterms that whatever he wanted to do was going nowhere, and so Bill Clinton, the politician, took over and made things happen so you could get the job done inside Washington back in the 90s, and from his standpoint, he got himself reelected. I don't think politically that this thing can change all that much between now and November, and from that I mean, Mitch, change to the point where there would be a great philosophical change on fossil fuel in this country and things that would get the consumer price index back down close to where it was when Trump left office. I think this is irreparably damaged under present leadership. Am I wrong on this?
Yeah, no, Ken, you're exactly right. And what's interesting is that Biden and the Democrats could make some changes on energy policy that could get inflation down quicker, but they don't have the stomach to do it. I've got friends and clients in Midland, West Texas. I talked to them last week about the permitting issue for wells. And while they opened up federal land in New Mexico, normally it takes a month or two to get a permit. Now it takes up to a year. So while they're saying, we're going to allow you to drill on federal and public land, you want a permit? Yeah, get in line and wait. Yeah. It's not solving the problem. The other issue that people aren't talking about that's going to be an issue here in the next coming months, we're going to have some food shortages, and a lot of the corn that's used in the country is used for ethanol. Now, if they go back to 100% gas and not 10, 15% ethanol, that's going to help with some of the food prices. But again, the Biden administration's not going to reverse that rule by having ethanol in fuel.
Yeah. It is a fix that this country is in. As I said, it affects everybody. It just doesn't affect one particular group of people, one particular race, one particular creed, one particular economic strata. All right, we know where we're at. And we know that the CPI is coming out later this week. We're going to get the inflation dump on May. We're going to find out whether or not May was any better than April. April was a little bit better than March, but not much. Okay, we're here. Biden met with the Fed chair last week. He wants to keep at arm's distance the Fed chair. There's only so much that the Fed can do to fix this, because the way I was always taught, and I did get some sort of knowledge about economics when I went to Ohio University all those years ago. If you want to bring interest rates, if you want to bring inflation down, you got to bring interest rates up, but you can't bring them up right now to where inflation is. And if you don't approach that inflation number, which is now 8.3%, you're not going to get inflation to come down, and also you're not going to get a lot of people buying things on time. What can the Fed do without totally taking this off the cliff and into the recession area?
Ken, they're going to have a real difficult time. There's never been a time in history where they've been able to reduce inflation by 4 percentage points without putting our country into a recession. I think if there is a silver lining is if we do go into a recession, it's going to be very shallow and very short. Another part that's some good news, the Omicron virus in Shanghai is starting to abate. You're seeing that port open, which is going to help the supply chain, which will cause more shipment of goods, which will build inventories. And I think you'll see some retailers starting to have sales and lower prices this summer and into the fall to move goods.
Well, if you're right, and I hope you are, about if a recession comes, it's shallow. When a recession comes, you get layoffs. That's just the way it works, and that would further exacerbate the problem. If it's a shallow recession, one would anticipate that some of these bigger companies would be able to absorb that without having to let people go. Already they've got, what now, 3.6% unemployment in this country. I think a lot of people aren't working. They're sitting it out. They're living on cash, maybe waiting for mom or dad to die and inherit some money. We still have over 11 million jobs in this country that aren't filled. But if you then throw into that mix people that are laid off from companies, you've got a major problem and not a shallow recession. So if you're saying shallow recession, I find that encouraging because I think we might be able to weather that from an employment standpoint. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and Ken, I would disagree with you just a little bit because there's a report that came out last week that 500,000 retirees have gone back to work because they hit their number, then inflation hit and the stock market's down. They've gone back to work. And the JOLTS report that you mentioned, 11 million, there's still lots of jobs out there. So the stagflation that we had in the 1970s, I don't think we're going to see it this time. And that's why I say I think the recession will be short-lived.
Well, I hope you're right. And if you could guru this a little bit for us, what do you think happens when we get the latest CPI this week? What do you think it looks like?
I think it's going to come down a little bit because we're starting to see year-over-year comparisons, and that's going to cause inflation to drop. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's higher. But I do think overall it's going to drop a little bit, but it's not going to be significant.
Mitch Kramer, financial strategist, financial planner, CEO, founder of Fluent Financial, 30-plus years in the business and investment experience, and a guy that knows this stuff inside out. You can find Mitch at fluentfinancial.com. It's always great talking to you. I feel better about maybe where we're going after that. You ought to be an inspirational speaker, and you ought to be in Washington, D.C., getting these guys off their rear ends and getting something done. Thank you, Mitch. Stay well.
Thank you, Ken. Have a great week.